You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay, happy Saturday. Sarah Koenig in Serial sets up a false premise. She asks the audience, how can a teenager remember 6 weeks ago on a normal day? And I think that is one of the most dishonest things about Serial. And today I'm going to explain why. I think I have about 20 points to make as to why it wasn't a normal day. For one, it was the day before a huge snowstorm. It was the day Adnan Syed's first girlfriend went missing, Hae Min Lee. Thirdly, it was the day that he lent out his car and his cell phone. It was the first full day he had with his cell phone. It was during Ramadan, where he was fasting. That should help jog his memory. It was also his friend Stephanie's birthday. It was the day Jay picked Adnan Syed, up from track practice. It was the day the police called him and asking him if he knew where Hae Min Lee was. And he was also high. So that should have jogged his memory, that experience. It was also the day Hae's brother called him, asking him if he'd seen Hae. It was an emotionally impactful day. And even Elizabeth Loftus, who is a memory expert and very defense-friendly, would agree with me when I say that we remember things that have emotional impact. That's why we remember where we were on 9/11. We remember where we were when JFK got shot, had we been living then. So it doesn't make sense. And despite an expensive defense team, they couldn't help Adnan piece it together. And despite 2 trials where you would think that everything would be focused on getting Adnan Syed an alibi, no memory for that very ordinary day. Adnan didn't have a history of having memory problems. No one else who knew the victim, Hae Min Lee, says it was an ordinary day and who could remember anything about it. Despite taking the time and the effort to show fellow inmates how to make barbecue sauce from ketchup, he's never taken the time in 2 decades to prove that Jay is a liar, to prove that the prosecution is wrong, and to find himself an alibi or a memory of where he was that day. And despite sitting in Supermax prison, nothing has come to mind all these years later, all these decades later. And despite piecing together every part of the day except for the time that Hae Min Lee, that he was killing Hae Min Lee or he was burying Hae Min Lee, he remembers what he was doing. And despite Serial being the biggest true crime podcast in the world, no one credible has come forward to give Adnan Syed an alibi. And go back, and I've gone over why Asia McClain is not a reliable alibi. She wants to offer him an alibi for the time between 2 and 8, which is interesting how he would know he would need an alibi for that time and how Adnan's family gave Asia McClain that time. Isn't it interesting that having a foggy memory benefits his defense in that he can have multiple options and things to possibly go for? He could make a plea deal. He could say he was here. He could say he was there, depending on what fits best with the evidence. So it's the best strategy in order to tailor your story to the evidence. And isn't it interesting that after all these years, he can't remember, but he's sure that he wasn't, during that time, killing his ex-girlfriend? Now, if you can't remember, I mean, wouldn't you I mean, how does he know if he can't remember is my point. How does he know for sure? And strangely, it all just sounds like an excuse that you come up with when you're guilty. And if it were really so hard to account for your time, alibis wouldn't be used as as one of the most important things for the police to eliminate or include a suspect or in our justice system. So I think what is more interesting than the facts about Adnan's guilt is how amazing it was that a podcast, a documentary, handful of podcasts were able to convince so many people that this guy who really doesn't, with all this help, really doesn't have a good alternative story and everything points to him, still has so much support. That's what's really incredible, and how Serial was able to sell this idea that you can't remember. Yeah, maybe 6 weeks down the line, but he wasn't asked 6 weeks down the line. He was asked immediately, and he should remember. That's what I have for today. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you back here real soon.